So I've now spent over 1,100 hours making video games, and I think it's completely changed the way I view work. Originally, I looked at work as something where if I'm more passionate and interested about it, I am just naturally going to find things a lot easier. And in some ways I did, but not in the ways that I expected. Before making games, I was running a B2B lead generation business, and after spending over 2 years pouring my time and energy into it, I eventually shut it down. There were probably a lot of reasons for this, but one of the biggest differences I noticed was how I never really cared about the problems I was solving. But with the games, I do. If a combat system doesn't work, if the UI looks terrible, or if the game simply feels boring, those problems can annoy me for days, but I actually want to figure them out. I think for a long time I confused that with passion. I thought passion meant being excited to work all the time, but I don't necessarily think that anymore. But there's this graph I think about from time to time when I'm working on a long project, and this graph is called the emotional cycle of change. For me, every game or project starts here. You've got the idea, you're imagining what it looks like, you're thinking about the finished game, people playing it, what you could learn from it. Everything is possibility. And because you haven't yet encountered most of the problems yet, it's incredibly easy to feel motivated. Then you actually start building it. Suddenly, the simple idea turns into 100 smaller problems. If it's a game, maybe the UI needs fixing, the combat doesn't feel right, something breaks. Or if it's some other project, maybe there's a lot more things for you to learn or things that are just far more complicated than you thought they should be. Then you have the part which I believe is responsible for killing a massive amount of projects, and that is the Valley of Despair. This is arguably where most people will get stuck and end up going all the way back to phase one and starting something new, which is also where I see people that are looking for the new best business model because when they tried a business model, they got stuck there and saw the business model of the problem, not the fact that they need to get through those problems. And then so they come all the way back. And that for me was is well has been a process for all of my games. Scarred Steel, for example, my first game was a very big one, where it was the first game I was trying to make with AI, and I got stuck. Where when I was supposed to release the game, I delayed it a month because it wasn't ready, and then when that time came round, I then delayed it another month because it still wasn't ready. And then 5 days before I was supposed to then release the game, I had not even finished playing through the whole game myself. So I didn't know if everything worked. That is obviously a bad spot to be in. And that was where I was at. And at that period of time, I was sometimes up until like 2 in the morning, just trying to get these things fixed and to get it out. So, safe to say, was not great. But I believe that in those moments of that valley of despair, a lot of the time it is simply just pushing forward. In my case, the scope of the project was completely blown out of proportion, where I kept adding more and more things to it, meaning I kept adding more and more problems to the line. And this is the part where you start thinking and questioning yourself. Was it the wrong project? Did I get myself into the wrong thing? Have I done it well enough? Do I know it well enough? You know, I don't know, is this right for me? And that obviously is where a lot of people will then go straight back to the beginning of that graph and start something completely new. The annoying part is that I haven't really found a good way to get out of that valley of despair in a smooth way. For me, it just always felt like I was trundling along. That goes for the first game I've made and for the second game, which I've almost released. It never really felt smooth. Some days were good, other days weren't. Some days I got things done within like an hour. Other times I had problems which would take me several days, and things were frustrating. But being able to push through that and want to solve those problems eventually for me got me out of that valley of despair to the informed optimism and obviously to then releasing the game in the future. And releasing Scarred Steel felt a bit weird to me. My games are by no means a masterpiece, but having something that was built, which was built of my own, I was able to actually see that right in front of my eyes, made a very big difference. And it's the sort of thing which made me reflect and go, well, the motivation didn't get me here. Or, maybe I had it to begin with, but I really had to take the time and energy to put towards the problems which I needed to solve that were right in front of me. And I think this goes for things out of games stuff as well. If you don't do anything in relation to game development, that's fine. I think this can go for things like other projects, things in business or health or fitness. Like there's always going to be, in my opinion, in my opinion, that emotional cycle of change. And that valley of despair being that core one, which everyone will get stuck at. Whether you're trying to, gain more muscle or lose weight or whatever it is, that valley of despair is going to hurt. And that is going to be that sort of thing. But again, if you care about that problem you want to solve, although you might not go about doing it in a very sexy way, you can get through that. And I think what's helped me is also being able to actually have even just a couple, friends or, family even, that can actually, to some level, give you a bit of support and accountability. I mean, I've got a small group that I'm in, which I'm very appreciative of. Um, but I believe that, as long as it's a problem that you want to solve, then that's going to help because I can count numerous times where when someone's told me to solve a certain problem, a lot of the times I really don't like the feeling of going and solving that because a lot of the times, if someone's telling me to solve a problem, it's usually not in necessarily always my best interests. But if there's something I look at which I'm building or working toward, whether it's building a better physique or, a business or whatever, I look at that and I go, well, yeah, sure, there's not always going to be problems that I want to solve, but if it's for a greater purpose, I want to make this game, I want to release this game, so I need to solve these problems or do this thing which I might be uncomfortable at. I think that's where the big distinction comes in. So that's what I would say. If you relate, let me know what you think. But with that said, I'll catch you soon.